your friends might just say like, oh, I like it, or, this is cool. That's it.
Yeah,
But you
right.
ask another musician, they will get into it and be like, wow, I love how you did the backings here. And, that's fair enough. Like if someone asked me about accounting, I'd be like, no clue.
Yeah, right. That's the one with the numbers, right? Yeah, I don't have any idea.
Yeah.
Hey folks, this is Love Music, and I'm your host, Julian Jones. Today I have international pop singer Dareen, hailing from Gambia, by the way of London, joining us all the way from Greece to talk about life, love, and what it's like starting music again after a 10-year hiatus. I'm thrilled about this conversation, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it too. Let's go. So Dareen, first thing I want to do is just thank you. I know between your business and your music, time is at a premium. So you deciding to spend some time with us here on Love's Music means the world. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, thank you very much for having me and taking the time as well to interview me.
So you're a singer, songwriter. Do you produce the music too?
No, not yet.
Okay, so singer, songwriter. I know that you're also an entrepreneur. What don't we know about you that we can't just find out on an Instagram page?
That depends if you follow me on Threads a lot, because I share a lot of my unfiltered thoughts there. But I think what would be good is there seems to be, well, not seems to be, like a lot of people get confused about my background and where I'm from, because I like to live in different places. And, so as we go through this podcast, I might mention things and you guys will be like, wait, didn't you just say you were born there or you're from there? So to rewind and bring it from the start. So I was born in Gambia, which is West Africa, but often people get confused by that, understandably. My mom is Polish. My dad is of Lebanese ethnicity. They met in Greece, then had me in Gambia. Then when I was 2, I moved to Poland. That's where I went to school, grew up. Then at 19, I went back to Gambia. Then I went back to Poland. I didn't really like either of those places. So I moved to England, where I lived for 10 years. And then a couple of years ago, I moved to Greece. That's where I'm now. So yeah.
Wow.
That's why my accent sounds the way it sounds. And I often talk about different languages, cultures, and yeah. So if anyone was ever confused, there it is.
So did that extensive travel and moving around, what role did that play in your earliest memories of music? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of different influences.
So I was too young to remember the first, from when I was a kid living in Africa, but I'm sure subconsciously I must have registered the kind of music that's there. But from my earliest memories, I just remember, whatever was there in the 90s on TV. Like, as millennials, we didn't really have that luxury to just go and, stream any song you wanted at any time.
Right.
So, the answer is easy for me. It was Britney, seeing Britney on TV for the first time, saying "Baby One More Time." That was like a canon event.
Yeah. Now, were you still a passive listener at that time? Or did you hear Britney and you're like, I want to do that?
I mean, kind of. I was only 6. So, I was like, I want to do that. But by that, I meant the cartwheels, the backflips,
Right.
the dance, which is actually what I did end up doing. Like, that got me to dancing at that age. But when I was that age, if people asked me, what do you want to be? I would be like, a star. I didn't know whether it was going to be singing, dancing, being a movie star. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Pearl.
No, I'm not familiar.
No, okay. So it's a popular meme where she's like, please, I'm a star. So yeah, that was me.
So, all right. So you see Britney on TV. You're like, all right, what was your gateway into actually making music your own? Were you trying to record tracks? Were you doing talent shows? Like, what were that early season of, performing. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, you actually did bring some memories that I forgot were there with the talent shows. I tried a few. I don't think I picked the best songs for my abilities, so it never really went anywhere. But there was always that push of wanting to do that kind of stuff. Like I remember um, there was this like lip syncing
That's
show
fun.
for kids,
Mhm.
right? And my mom had a party and she had some friends over, and one of the guests was a daughter of some producer that was working on that show. And she drunkenly said, "Yeah, of course, I'll get you on it." And she gave me her number foolishly because I wouldn't stop calling and asking her, like, "Oh, is it happening?" And bless her, she was like, "Yeah, I'll try my best." It didn't happen.
Oh,
But yeah, but it was always there. And like, I did get into competitive dancing at that age, from
okay.
age 6 to 10. So there was an element of being on stage performing, but it wasn't quite music. I did write some songs. They were like some silly songs. And then at like 10 or 11, I wanted extra credit for English. So for context, I was in Poland. So English was like an extra topic, not like your main literature.
Like taking a
So
foreign
I
language.
wrote a song. Yeah, exactly. I never paid attention because I was bilingual, but anyway. So I thought, okay, what can I do for extra credit? So I wrote this song, and my teacher was kind of like, "How do you know these things?" Because I think it was quite mature for that age.
All right, so you're like sixth grade writing like deep like songs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was talking about how people are scared because like they don't have money and stuff like that. Or like they're just, yeah. Anyway, I want to work on that song, like maybe not the entirety of it, but some parts were really good. So it might come out eventually, something I wrote at 11. But yeah, it wasn't until I moved to Gambia at 19-ish that I got to record my first song.
Is it one of the
So
songs on Spotify? Was it something I would have heard already?
no, it's on SoundCloud. The production is probably, I mean, yeah, it's definitely illegal because we didn't buy the beat of anybody. Like
Okay.
my friends just downloaded it and we were like, yeah, let's go to the studio, not thinking about those things at the time. And yeah, so it was actually a friend of mine that got me into making music because he also wanted to. So we were like, okay, let's do this together. So we recorded 2 songs. The mixing isn't best. It's like super auto-tune. But yeah, it was there. It was fun. It got me into that flow. But then when I moved back and I went, living in London, getting into adult life, trying to work, all of that, it just, my creative dreams took a backseat until last July.
Okay. So you took like it sounds like about a decade hiatus, right?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I was writing some music in the background, always singing and, the usual. But I did actually try to make a song by myself in GarageBand. It wasn't the best. But yeah, it was always there. And then funny enough, it was actually the same friend that I had recorded the first song with that was like, okay, let's do a collab. I was like, sure. So I did go to a studio locally, and then having seen the setup and everything, I was like, oh, I could just do this at my home. It doesn't look as complicated. You don't maybe necessarily need a whole professional booth anymore because, with technology and everything now. So then I decided, yeah, it's time. It's time for me, to finally get going. Like I have the time, I have the resources. So enough of excuses, really.
Can you take me through that, like the emotional landscape of that? Because I think as creatives, we never
Mm,
really quit music. Like I feel like it's just kind of in you, but you take breaks.
yeah.
Music breaks your heart when you're 24. You get a big boy job, and then when you're like 29, you're like, I don't know, I kind of want to record a song. Can you take me
Yeah.
through what's happening emotionally when you're like, I got to write some more music? Like, what was going on, like in your mind and in your life in July when you decided to start writing again?
Yeah, it was like the point where I said, okay, I've recorded one thing. now, what is stopping me? Nothing really, right? Like there was always an excuse that I had before where it was, I don't know how, I don't have the funds. How will I find a studio? Like, I'll be honest, the main reason why I wasn't making music before is just because I didn't know it could be so easy. And I was overwhelmed by the whole process because I think in my mind, it was how it used to be back in the day where you had to have a label and then they had to release your music. Like, I didn't realize you could just record something, buy a beat off the internet, have somebody mix it, and then you can upload it and have it distributed to every platform.
It hasn't been simple for very long. I mean, I feel like we're maybe a decade removed from where you actually did need to like go to the studio and go through the whole rigmarole of hiring somebody, an engineer. God forbid you don't know how to play an instrument, so now you need like a mercenary band to just kind of like play your stuff. And yeah, it is a lot.
Yeah.
I agree. So what are you working on currently? If somebody was your fan, where could they see you? Where could they have seen you? Where would they, like, how do they get a hold of you to support you?
So I am on all the streaming platforms. I'm on Spotify and YouTube, Apple Music, Tidal, whatever you name it. I'm on Instagram where you can see a bit more of my day to day. I'm a bit active on TikTok. And in terms of performing live, it hasn't happened much. I had a first show in Gambia last December. For now, it's where I live, there isn't a big music scene. I'm in a small town and there is a barrier of me not speaking Greek. So even if there is like a call out, I don't understand what they're saying. uh, I did have an invitation to perform in London, but the timing isn't right for me to go there. But it's definitely something I would love to do more of when I get the chance.
Okay. One of my favorite songs in your catalog, probably my favorite song, if I'm being honest, is Villains. Is it Villain or Villains?
The Villain.
The Villain. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm listening to The Villain, and it's this happy medium between two artists I like. One we already mentioned, Britney Spears, but it also has a Banks feel. Are you familiar with Banks at all? Like
yes, I am. Yeah.
And it's like the happy medium between those two artists, and I loved it. I'm like, I heard that song, and I was like, I cannot wait to talk to this girl. What was the motivation behind that song, The Villain?
It's about you being villainized by others, like, other people not taking accountability for playing their part in whatever conflict there may be. Like when I say, what's the weather like up there on your high horse, from the kind of people that love to think that, they're just the saint in the story. So I'm like, you know what? Fine. You want me to be the villain? I'll be the villain. I don't care. And I don't mind, like I say in the chorus. So yeah, I really wanted to make a song that was, a bit more upbeat than my usual stuff, but still kept in that kind of darker mood. But thank you for that comparison because I love both of those artists. And whenever someone mentions Britney and me in the same sentence, my head grows a little bit. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, and the thing is, and I want to make the distinction. You don't sound like Britney. There's a vibe and there's an energy, and it comes forth in your music. I mean, clear now it makes sense. But it's like there's also that dark moodiness. But you are 100%. You are your own thing. So whenever I try to reference another artist, I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I get that.
The energy, it's a similar energy. Yeah. So yeah, and I like the more ethereal ambient stuff too. I think I came on Fever Dream was the first song I heard of yours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Fever Dream was more like an ambient, soulful. I really like that one as well. Do you think if you are going to put out a full length LP, are you leaning more towards like the dancey synth pop stuff, or do you think you'll do more ethereal stuff, or just kind of just see where the mood takes you?
I think a bit of both. Like I do tend to gravitate more towards the softer ethereal songs, but I've had so much fun with making The Villain and working on songs that like that. I mean, I do have love for hyper pop and just, good, nice pop. I just don't know where I find myself with that. So I think this is a happy medium between the two. So yeah, I am contemplating making an album, or releasing one, or maybe an EP, LP, something along those lines. I think I just want to take some time and find myself musically and make something coherent, because at the moment it's sort of like, because I haven't been making music for so long and I wanted to, there are these songs that are in me that need to get out first. And then once they're out in the wild, I can focus on the next things that I want to say.
I love that you framed it that way, as music that's in you that needs to get out of you. I don't think you people completely understand that feeling unless you are a musician. Like I don't want to speak for you, but when I have a song that I really like, it's borderline painful until I get the song out. Like I'm not a musician, so I can't just like pluck it out on the chords. Like I'm singing it in my head over and over again until I get to the engineer and unburden myself of this piece of art I have just like stuck in me. Can you speak to that specific frame? Like, what does it feel when you have like a burning idea and you have to get it out? Because I think a lot of people, I don't think, unless you're a creator, you don't understand what that feels like.
I 100% agree. Like my first song I released, In Disguise, I wrote that when I was 19 years old. So that was almost 12, 13 years ago. And it's not like I had it written down somewhere. This was all in my mind for those years. Sat there with all the lyrics I've remembered from that one evening when I wrote it down. And I just had to get it out, It just had to come out. And now that it did, I'm like, okay, I'm free of that. I can focus on something else. I sometimes feel like creation and these ideas, they just come through us. And you never know when it's going to hit you, which can sometimes be the most inconvenient times. And yeah, until they get out, they're going to be stuck in you. So it's like emotions. I mean, music is emotion, right? And unless you release your emotion, they're going to sit in you. So I think as artists, this is the best way for us to shake it off and, like you said, unburden ourselves from that.
Absolutely. Something else you said I asked you about, when is the full length project coming? And you replied, I'm still trying to find myself as an artist. And that's your hesitance to almost commodify and productize yourself into this like singular product. And you're saying, well, no, I'm going to wait a little bit. I'm still trying to find the sound. I think that's lost in a lot of musicians. They say, all right, well, I want the plays. I want the accolades. I want to be performing. I need to productize my art so that way I can get up on stages and move around. And I think that how you're doing it in terms of, all right, well, let me just see what I have first. Let me get rid, like, let me unburden myself of this art and just see I don't even know what I have yet. I think that's commendable. And I think that not putting a time limit on it is so healthy. Not just the art. It's first off, it's healthy for you. It's good for the art. And it's so refreshing to hear somebody doing it the right way.
Well, thank you to start with. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I have thoughts where, maybe I should make a song like this to, gain more traction, be more commercial, lean more into that. But I think without trying to sound ageist, I am in my 30s, right? So I am not sort of expecting to become this global pop star and blow up and just, do all of that. If it happens, that's great. Like if people resonate with my music, if it becomes popular, amazing. But it gets to a point when not doing art is more painful than doing it.
100%. That's why I'm standing here in front of a camera and computers now, because I just had to create something. So I was like, if I'm not going to do a full length album, I at least want to be around music, just be close to it. I don't know what the show's going to be. Like, I don't really know what I have yet, but I know I want to be around people that are doing things and making cool things, and, if I have 1 million subs or 10 subs, great. I just want to be around it, so I totally identify with that as well. Who are the artists that I like that. I use the term taking up real estate in your heart, right? Like who
Mm.
right now that's actually putting out music currently?
I can't say about just artists right now because, the part of in my heart is also from artists that put out music years ago and it's still there. But to walk it through it, it started with Britney and Spice Girls, which I think did for every little girl in those days. And then in a true millennial fashion, I went into an emo phase. So there was a lot of Evanescence, Linkin Park, which I think, also has some sort of impact on my music now. I don't know if you're familiar with Tattoo,
Yes.
the Russian duo. I mean, to this day, I love their music. And if you haven't heard the Russian original versions, I recommend it because it's really good. I then, went through just the usual pop. So Rihanna, Beyonce, Lady Gaga, love a little bit of pop. And one of my favorite artists is The Weeknd, and especially his earlier music. That's what I resonate with most. And up till this day, he's one of my favorite artists. I really like Banks that you mentioned. And I think some of the newer generation great artists now is Isabel La Rosa, um, Ari Abdul. They are in the dark pop scene. There are some of my friends that are great musicians, such as Ira Mafam, Kaylee Wilson. I don't want to, I mean, I don't want to miss out and not mention anyone, but yeah.
Awesome. The ones that you know more personally, do you get to collaborate with them at all, or?
We're working on that. I have a collab with one of my other friends, Maddie Hannah, who you can also check out, which is coming out. Well, I don't know when this episode will come out, but it's coming out on the 4th of April. So yeah,
Okay.
it will be available everywhere. You can go and check it out.
Yeah, it's awesome. So switch gears a little bit. I know that you mentioned earlier that you had a podcast. So you're obviously a multi-dimensional artist. Can you tell me about the project that you're working on? Because it sounded really interesting, and I was hoping you'd expand on it.
Yeah, sure. So one of the artists I mentioned earlier, Ira Mafam, she's a Danish singer-songwriter. So I think for a while she's been curating playlists and focusing especially on female musicians and ethereal vibes. And, so I had the privilege to be added to one of these playlists once my first song released. And then shortly after, she sort of reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be a part of a group chat that she's creating, which was a nice synchronicity because just a day before I was telling my husband how I'm enjoying the fact that I am starting to make some connections with other musicians and there's people I can talk to about music because I've never really had that with my close friends. Like, didn't really have many artistic friends, especially musicians. So yeah, that happens a day after. And I was like, yeah, definitely. So we started, well, it became like a community where we would all share tips and ideas and, hype each other, support each other. And it was really beautiful. And I thought it'd be nice to work on something like have a podcast or maybe a radio station, just a way where all these things we are sharing with each other can be put out to everybody. Everyone can maybe learn something because they all come with a wealth of knowledge about what it's like to be an artist or an independent artist, especially. And, they're just all very interesting people that have something to say that isn't always only in their music. So the podcast is called the same way that the playlist is called, which is Hymn of the Goddess.
Okay.
And yeah, you can find it on YouTube and Spotify.
So just to summarize, it's a group of musicians, or I should say artists, who all encourage each other, exchange ideas. And this is on a podcast that meets monthly, weekly?
Monthly at the moment. Planning to do it bi-weekly, which by that I mean every 2 weeks, not twice a week. Yeah, but for now it releases monthly around mid-month.
Fantastic. That's great. Here's a question I have, and I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I always phrase this as an artist speaking to another younger artist. And I always ask the question, what advice would you have for a younger artist starting out? And I think that you and myself are in unique positions where we are artists for virtually our whole lives. We've also taken significant breaks. What advice would you give to somebody who's a little bit later in life? I mean, you're probably in the second quarter, so to speak, and they're trying to start out, maybe worked a 9-to-5 job, after college, but still has that burning desire to create. What advice would you give them?
I think I would start with, don't ask everyone and anyone for opinion and validation. Because, you might get discouraged by someone who could be jealous and not realize it, by someone who has a completely different taste and therefore cannot really, give the right feedback. And, we can take these things to heart and then just be like, oh, maybe I should forget it. Like, do something that means and matters to you. It's probably not going to be perfect, and that's fine. I no one expects to be perfect from the start. And find good people to work with. Don't think you have to do and know everything. I mean, as long as you have the budget. But even if you don't, I'm sure there are other people that would want to collaborate potentially for free. But, just find your people and try to block out the noise and, validate yourself. It's easier said than done, but yeah.
Sounds a little bit like you're speaking from experience. Has your feedback in terms of getting started again been mixed?
Before I started releasing, I would make a demo and, send something off to a friend who may never even listen to this kind of music. So I would then take that on and think, maybe I should make something more cheerful just because they don't like said kind of music. And then got me thinking, like, there are artists I love and my friends hate them. So it doesn't mean they're a bad artist. It's just, it's not their taste. So yeah, I think, it's nice to put something out and get feedback and listen to it. But asking a friend or something like that might sometimes backfire. Like, you might expect someone's going to hype you and you're not going to get that. And that will influence your later actions.
Now, do you notice a difference between feedback from creators versus just like passive music listeners, people that aren't really in the business or know much about, the people that just like listen to music for tone, they're not really like into it, versus a creator who actually creates music?
Yeah, definitely. Your friends might just say like, oh, I like it, or, this is cool. That's it. But you ask another musician, they'll get into it and be like, wow, I love how you did the backings here. And, or if it's a song that's like a demo and you're sharing it, I did that with my friend yesterday. And she said, oh, maybe you should go a little bit lower on the verses. But if I had sent it to, someone who isn't a musician, they'd just be like, okay, sounds cool,
Right.
And that's fair enough. Like, if someone asked me about accounting, I'd be like, no clue.
Yeah, right. That's the one with the numbers, right? Yeah, I don't have any idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. The difference between creator feedback and just regular listener feedback is hilarious. I mean, I remember, this is a pretty funny story. Like I would pour my life into an album, right? And I'd play it for my brother's a musician, my dad's a musician, my engineer, or I'll play it for like another engineer producer. And it's like, yeah, I love how you sat the lyrics or I sat the vocal kind of in the back of the mix, and you can really hear the other the music coming forward, and I can hear. I love that bass line, and like they really dissect it on like a cerebral level. And I'll play it for the other friends, and like half of my friends are like Neanderthals, right? And I'll play it for them, and I'll get feedback like, you should make like another album, but with like way better beats. And I'm like, oh, great. Great feedback. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot.
What am I supposed to do with that? Do you have Pharrell Williams in your phone? And maybe I'll dial up some better songs. Like, what are we like? They just have no idea. Yeah. Go ahead.
One of the bad feedback, well, bad, like when you play someone your song and they're like, "Oh, the beat is great," I'm like, "Cheers, I didn't make that."
I know, right? Yeah, I'll let my guitarist know. You know.
Yeah, I'll tell the producer. So
Yeah.
basically, I can just go fuck myself.
Yeah. Right. Seriously. Right. What about my story? What about my life that was in the album?
Yeah.
Yeah. So funny. So as an avid music appreciator, I should say, do you appreciate like the full cohesive album, or do you like the singles? Do you have like a special? There's always like the albums versus singles debate.
I don't always listen to full albums. I mean, I did get into it recently, but I wasn't necessarily someone who would like have a big collection of CDs. I was always more into like, okay, I like this song, so I'm going to listen to it on repeat. But I can appreciate a good album when it's put together and, when you can see the story behind everything, the progression, the switches from one song to the other. I think the more I'm making music and being in this environment, the more I notice these things, and it changes your perception and how you receive music for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to swear by albums. And then I kind of, the more, actually, ironically, the more I got into pop music, I was like, yeah, like sometimes you just need like the equivalent of like music junk food. Not everything has to be like a deep introspective,
Yeah.
journey through my feelings. I was like, yeah, I kind of just want to like dance and have like a nice ride to the supermarket, And so,
Yeah, like you go to the gym, you want something that's going to hype you up. Like there's always appropriate music for different things. Like I couldn't just sit and chill and listen to, I mean, I am not a techno person or house or anything like that on a day to day. But if I'm at the gym or at a party, fuck yeah. But if I'm sitting at home, it will probably irritate me.
okay.
I don't know, I get agitated by sound sometimes, which isn't perfect being a musician.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I went through a little bit of a house phase. Yeah, I'm like like if I talk to another house music fan and I start mentioning my artist, that they look at me like, oh, you're like a house pose. I listen to like mainstream house music, but then, like that's like the extent of like my house knowledge. So you mentioned the gym. I have to ask you, right? As a musician, tries to keep it tight, try to stay in shape. How often are you going to the gym?
I go to the gym twice a week. I also do Pilates, and I do boxing, which I had a break from. But I've always been an active person, so it really, I'm sure it helps with music, but that's not the main objective.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if like it influences your creative process at all. I know that I've come up with some of my best ideas on like a short run. Just like clearing my mind and
Okay.
just being like alone in like the weather.
I will sometimes listen like to stuff on the treadmill and like try to come up with things, but my best my best music comes either in the shower, which is the cliche, or when doing the dishes.
Okay, that makes
So
sense.
yeah.
Shower
But
makes sense.
yeah. At the gym, and I don't really know dance for sure. That has, an impact on your creative process, because you want to, like, I want to make music that I can also dance to, or how this would make me feel. If I play it, will that try to, will I want to move to it? And yeah, that's why I have fun with the villain, because it's something I can listen to at the gym that will, hype me up a little bit. But I don't know. I haven't really thought about it in that aspect. Like, I don't go on runs. Maybe I should, and that would help me. But it's interesting. I should probably ponder on that.
So take me through your creative process. Well, first, talk to me about duration. So from the time a song like "The Villain," which sounds like a polished, well done pop song, if somebody played that for me and they said this is going to be on the next Gaga album, I'd be like, yeah, okay, like that's how good that song is, right? It's that it's
Thank
a
you.
industry standard quality song. From the time you come up with the idea to the time you come up to your final edit, how much time are we talking about here?
Well, that depends on my producer and how quickly he mixes it, which version I like. But from my end, it depends. Like sometimes I can sit down and just write a song in one go. And that's it. Like, inspiration hits. Like I wrote a song yesterday, but it wasn't something that I just sat and wrote. There were like, I had some bits of lyrics that I thought of or something that was for another song, but didn't got discarded, but I still like the lyrics and they could work with this. So I put all of that together. I'm like, okay, I go to my notes app. What do I have? I go through my notebooks. And then I'm like, okay, this could work. I could rewrite that. For the villain specifically, I was doing the dishes. That's when the idea came. And I just, the hook came to me. So I wrote that down. And then I went searching for a beat because I don't produce. So usually I work with the same two producers, but for this occasion, like it was slightly outside of their style. So I found, beatstars.com, found a great producer, La Palmira, really loved the stuff. And then I sort of adjusted the chorus to work with that beat. And then when I had that in place, I was like, okay, so this is how much space and this is the tempo and this is what I've got for, let's say, the verses and the bridges. And that all in all probably took from 1 to 2 weeks for me to record and everything. And then I would send it off to my producer / mixing engineer. And yeah, it depends. This one took a bit longer because I was in between switching microphones and travel, etc. So I would say it could take a month to 2 months for a song, but sometimes it could be all done in like 2-3 weeks.
Wow. So in that time, do you have other ideas filing in? Are you pretty much all focused on this one project, or are you like me where you have like 13 projects started and nothing done?
Yes, exactly. I'm never focused on just one project. Yeah. I don't know what that means. There's, as we speak, I have probably 13 tabs open on my Chrome. So yeah, I would describe my creative process in general as like, there's always something opened, mid-finished. And probably that's not the best way, but that's how my brain functions creatively, I'll say, okay, today I'm going to work on this. But then inspiration comes. So what, am I going to just tell it to go away? No.
Right, yeah.
There's always, I'll work on something and then something else will have my mind a little bit. But I try to at least finish one song first before I move on to the next.
So when you do have, I'm going to say dozens of ideas swirling around, but you can only really, bandwidth-wise and resource-wise, you can only really crank out one at a time. How do you decipher between what's a throwaway and what's special? Or are there no throwaways? I mean, every song might be good.
I just make sure I write everything down. Like I have probably too many notebooks. And so, I write all my ideas, all my projects. If there are any lyrics running around my mind, I would also, put them in the notes app. And they might get, reheated after 10 years or maybe after 3 months. But yeah, I try to not discard anything. It's always somewhere, either somewhere in, at the back of my mind, somewhere in a notebook. If I'm feeling like my voice isn't best today, then maybe I'll focus on writing, or I will get into another project that I have set out for myself, or, work on my business. But if like I'm having a really good singing day, then I'll be like, okay, let me record something. Because, there's pretty much always something to record. So I tried to just work around, how I feel energetically. If it's sunny, then obviously I'll have more energy to work. I'm also a woman, so, there are times where I have more energy during the month and times that I don't. And it's not just that 1 week, everything changes for a woman in a cycle. So I think it's important to honor that and just not try to push ourselves every single day. We can't have the same productivity every day, different times of year, everything. So yeah, just be in tune with yourself.
Yeah, for somebody I know you mentioned earlier, for someone who's trying to find themselves musically, you've come off and present as just so centered and emotionally intelligent the way you talk about your music and your creative process. I mean, the pressure to just purge your art and put out work and make the deadline and like you just seem so centered and just like know exactly what you're doing, and it's so refreshing. I just have to commend you.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm glad it seems like that to others. It doesn't always feel like that to me. It is tempting to just put out the stuff you have as soon as possible. But I think there's a balance to be had between, perfectionism and rushing things. And, like there is a pressure because we all want to cater to the algorithms. There's this, I don't know if it's true, it's a myth that Spotify wants us to release every 4 to 8 weeks, which is something I tried to do. But if the song isn't ready, I'm not going to push it sooner than it needs to be, just to please that, because whatever happens, happens. Like, if it's meant to be, if I'm meant to become famous, I will. I mean, I'm a big believer in manifestation and power of attraction and all of that. So I think that keeps me centered.
I wonder how much of what you just talked about has to do with the sophomore slump. I mean, if you figure you spend a lifetime making that first album and then you actually get a little bit of traction, you're like, okay, well, we need the second album in 8 months. And you're like, well, it took me 33 years to make the first one. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's why you get these like rush projects, and you have these like broke artists who put everything into their first album. The label got paid back, but they didn't get paid. So I wonder how much of what you're talking about has to do with that. I'd wonder. But interesting stuff. And I know with us running low on time, you said you have another business too. Is that something you wanted to talk about in here? I'm personally curious about it, but if it's not something you want to talk about in a podcast setting, you don't have to.
No, I don't mind. I'm a wedding/event planner. I organize weddings specifically in Gambia. So if you want to get married, anybody listening wants to get married in Gambia, hit me up.
Yeah.
It's quite different to like what I do, but I mean, to being a musician, it sort of came about from me getting married there and seeing there was a gap in the market. And I thought I could feel that. So yeah, I'm also working on a few other things. I'm working on putting out a manifestation journal, like a guided journal. So yeah, I have now the time, like I mentioned, I think because I haven't had to work a day job, a 9 to 5, and I used to work in real estate for many years, and then I went into project management. So they were very stressful jobs. A lot of angry clients. It took a toll. So once I was finished with that, I didn't really have the energy or the mental capacity to create. They say you cannot create from a state of survival.
Brilliant.
So unfortunately, for many of us that, have to or had to work on a daily basis, like I understand it's not so easy to then take the time to create what you want to create. So yeah, I have to say, like, having the opportunity and the option to not have to do that on a daily basis was probably one of the reasons why I actually started making music again.
Yeah, and I love that for you. That's awesome. Yeah, I read something earlier. They're like, yeah, that starving artist thing is a myth. Like being like broke and living on the street, and from that struggle, creating the best music. Has good music come from that? I'm sure. From addiction and pain and depression, I'm sure great music has come about from that. But they said you actually are the most creative from a biological standpoint when you are happy and have healthy relationships and you're well fed. You're not wondering where your meals are coming from. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people kind of romanticize starving artists, and it's not really realistic or accurate.
No, I mean, even the starving artists, they used to have, what were they called? Patrons or people sponsoring them? Like,
Right.
there was always someone that would be giving them like a wage, so to speak, so that they can stay creative and, they would buy their art, but also just pay them to live so that they can create. But having said that, what you just said, that great music comes from struggle, 100%. And it feels like a disconnect in my art where I am married, I am in a happy long-term relationship, yet I sing about heartbreak, right? Because it's not my experience today, but it's the time I've had to process previous experiences. And sometimes it could be an inspiration from someone telling me a story about a letter they found. Um, you know, like, yeah, but I think when we get to the point where, like you said, we are healthy, happy, secure, that we can then create and maybe reminisce about the times that things weren't so pink.
Yeah, you don't have to be amidst the emotional aesthetic to write about it. It's called creative. You can create from a memory,
Yeah.
create from a story or somebody else's narrative or your own, but a previous one. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely what you said, and I agree with you too. And I'm happy that you are in a good place and making killer music at the same time. So that's great.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
Yeah, so I want to remind folks they can find you on most social media platforms, Spotify, not Apple Music, right?
Apple Music as well, all of them.
Okay, so Dareen,
Yes.
Dareen, Spotify, Apple
Yeah.
Music, all your socials, um, Threads, Instagram, TikTok. You said
Yeah.
you're not, as far as merch goes. You have the journals. Is there anything else that you have along the way? If I want to get like a couture Doreen T-shirt, like can I get one of those or not yet?
Oh, I am working on merch. Yes. It's something, yes. I'm working on a photo shoot that will potentially translate into merch. I did actually list all of the things I'm working on at the moment, but it's probably too many for me to remember. But yeah, journals, wedding planning, podcast, making music, and whatever the hell I feel like on the day.
There you go. Well, if I want to come alongside, like I was saying before, if I do want to come along or anybody wants to support you, what's the single best way that a new fan can support you if they want to support you today?
Well, I'm also on Bandcamp. So if you want to purchase my music, you can do it there. But I think, just being there, listening, sharing your feedback, sharing the music, talking about it, showing it to your friends, and just giving a word of encouragement, because sometimes people don't realize how much it can mean to an upcoming artist that they actually have a fan, like we don't realize if we do. So someone coming along and saying, "Hey, I'm a fan," it's like, okay, that's great to know.
Absolutely. And it does go a long way. Like we really like unless you really engage, and we see it too, especially at the level that we're at, now. It's somebody reaches out with love or word of encouragement. It goes a long. You never know what us artists are going through. So if our stuff
Hmm.
resonates with you, please let us know.
Yeah. Which, on that note, I must say I've listened to your music earlier today. I see that there's been quite some time ago, but it was really good. I can't say that I went through everything because there was a lot, but I definitely saw the country influence.
Oh yeah, you saw it. Yeah, using the Bourbon Folk album.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So good stuff there. I will carry on listening to the rest and well, how many songs are out there?
There's 4 albums, and then I did like a 6-song EP with my brother. But it's like spanning a bunch of different genres. So depending on what you play, it sounds like a
Yeah.
different artist half the time.
Love that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it will probably take a while to get through it, but great work. And I hope that there's something coming from you soon again.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, that means the world. I gotta have you back too. In a perfect world, I would have like my
Mm,
core group of artists that comes on, loves music. It's not like a come one, come all. It's only I'm
mm.
inviting people on who I like them personally, and I really like what they're doing creatively. So I really hope you'll come back and visit us again.
I would love to. Thank you so much. I had so much fun.